So this is to try and diagnose a knocking sound. I replaced the timing cover. I had a leak. So this is what it sounds like. So my coolant leak was kind of back in here on the timing chain cover. And to replace that gasket, you basically need to take off this whole front fan, water pump, the damper, and fuel pump. Pretty much all that stuff needs to come off. So after I did it, I heard a knocking sound, kind of loud. I thought the worst. I thought, maybe the bearings, main bearings or something. And then I checked the rocker. I thought maybe the rockers, it was a little high pitched, so I thought maybe the rockers need to be tightened down. I looked at those. I drained some oil. The oil looked all right. I thought maybe water had gotten into the oil pan from removing the water pump and timing chain cover. It looked all right. So tightened down looked at my rockers, and they seemed to be okay. And the next thing I did was I took a stick. It sounded like it was coming from the front, so I pulled the fuel pump out first and looked at that. Everything seemed to be okay. But I took a stick and I put it up against this area right here, and it felt like it was coming from right there. So I'm assuming that the chain may be hitting the fuel pump, because it wasn't doing it before. And the idea is, like, way down here there's a spacer on the 429. There's a spacer in front of the damper, and I may not have pushed it in far enough. So what I'm going to try is taking some of this apart and pressing the damper back in just a little bit. It looks like 1/8 of an inch, but that may be enough to push the chain in, and it seems like it may be hitting right here. So we'll find out. So before I tear all this apart, I think I may have found another solution to the tapping noise. I pulled the fuel pump off. Everything seems to be okay, but if I put my finger way up inside here, there's a bolt right about here that may be too long. I may have put one in there that's too long, because it feels like it's going all the way through, almost hitting the chain, and it shouldn't be in that area. So we'll try that out. Yeah, so it sounds like it was a bolt going through the water pump that was maybe a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch too long. So here's what my problem was after thinking it was like a crank bearing or maybe the rocker. This fuel pump right here, the tip broke off. One of the bolts that was going through the timing chain cover was too long, I believe, and it was hitting this as the fuel pump arm as it was rotating around this right here. But here's the piece that was luckily sitting inside right there, so I knew what it was. Otherwise I might not have figured it out. And as you can see, there's a little bit of metal around this bolt hole right here, so that should be the problem. A lot easier than what I would have thought. So when this timing cover was on, I pulled the fuel pump off, put my finger through here, and I felt this bolt sticking out further than it should. So I removed that bolt, started the truck back up, and I still heard the clattering sound. So I was kind of doubting myself. I thought it was maybe something else, a bearing again. But what it was this piece from the fuel pump was actually sitting on this ledge, and it was, I guess, bouncing around, which was lucky because I almost replaced this timing cover with a modern, newer timing cover made somewhere else, and it didn't have this ledge right here, so this would have been bouncing around inside my timing chain and everything else. So I got lucky. Here's the install tool, and you can just rent this from any auto parts store. Basically, you find out which one of these goes inside your crank. This bolt goes in here, and then this bearing goes in first, and you want this side up towards the face, and then this bolt goes on top of that, and it'll just tighten down here and install the damper. Here's the install kit. So it looks like when it's put together. So now I got these two bolts in here with a pipe going through them just to hold the crank while I remove this center bolt right here. And then I'm going to put my installer on and try and push the damper in just a little bit and see if that helps. Here's the setup for removing the damper. Here's the damper removal tool. So you just screw three of these into your damper, and this goes in the center of this, and it just kind of pulls it off. So to get this damper back on, you just line this keyway up with this key right here. But if you want to get this, if you're pulling it off and you want to get the spacer off, you need to remove this key first. So the way to do it is you take a hammer and kind of hit one side, and the bottom of it is like a half moon. So when you hit the one side, it'll roll up and start to pop out, and then you can pull it out and remove the spacer. So here's another problem with the early 429, I think it's the cam gear. These teeth are plastic, I believe, and they wear down. You can see them.